Are Netflix's most addictive mature romances hiding behind titles people pretend they never clicked? This countdown is not only about new releases from 2026, it is about the top 15 mature romantic movies available on Netflix in 2026. Some are emotional, some are controversial, and some turn love into obsession, betrayal, temptation, and regret. Stay until number one, because the final pick is still one of Netflix's most debated romance titles. Number 15, Purple Hearts, 2022. A fake marriage sounds like a romantic trick, until pain makes it feel dangerously real. Purple Hearts begins with a setup that feels almost too simple. Cassie is an aspiring musician struggling with real-life pressure, while Luke is a Marine preparing for deployment. They come from completely different worlds, and at first, their connection is not built on dreamy romance. It is built on need, survival, and a risky arrangement that slowly turns into something neither of them planned. Netflix describes the film as a marriage of convenience between a musician and a Marine that becomes real after tragedy strikes. That is why it works as a mature romance entry. It is not about perfect chemistry from the first glance. It is about two damaged people forced to confront pride, fear, sacrifice, and emotional responsibility. Some viewers loved its intensity. Others argued over its politics and melodrama, but nobody can deny its watchability. Purple Hearts earns its place because it turns fake love into a dangerous emotional test. Number 14, Lonely Planet, 2024. Sometimes the most tempting romance begins when someone is far away from the life they were supposed to understand. Lonely Planet is quieter than the flashier titles on this list, but that is exactly where its mature power comes from. Laura Dern plays a newly single novelist who arrives at a writer's retreat in Morocco, carrying emotional exhaustion, creative pressure, and the kind of loneliness success cannot fix. Then she forms an unexpected connection with a younger man, played by Liam Hemsworth, who is also questioning his own life choices. Netflix lists it as a romance set at an idyllic writer's retreat in Morocco, where that connection slowly reshapes both characters. The film works because it treats attraction as a turning point, not just a fantasy. The Moroccan setting adds warmth and escape, but underneath the beauty is a serious adult question. Are they falling for each other, or falling for the chance to become different people? Lonely Planet is soft, elegant, and quietly risky. Number 13, Through My Window, 2022. A crush across the glass turns into the kind of obsession that romance movies know exactly how to sell. Through My Window became one of Netflix's most recognizable modern teen to young adult romance titles because it understands the power of forbidden attention. Raquel has watched her mysterious next-door neighbor Aries from a distance for years, building a fantasy around someone who feels unreachable. But when that distance finally breaks, the story becomes more complicated than a simple dream romance. Netflix describes the film as Raquel's longtime crush on her neighbor becoming something more, despite his family's objections. That family resistance gives the movie its classic romantic pressure. Desire on one side, social boundaries on the other. The film is glossy, dramatic, and built for viewers who like jealousy, tension, secrets, and emotionally reckless choices. It may not be subtle, but it is addictive, because it turns a private fantasy into public trouble. Through My Window belongs here because it knows exactly what its audience came for: chemistry, conflict, and danger wrapped in romance. Number 12, The Lovebirds, 2020. A breakup turns into a crime scene, and suddenly romance has no choice but to run for its life. The Lovebirds is not the usual candlelight and confession romance. It throws a collapsing relationship into a chaotic murder mystery and watches the truth come out under pressure. Issa Rae and Kumail Nanjiani play a couple already speeding toward separation when one insane accident drags them into danger, panic, and suspicion. That is what makes the movie interesting for a mature romance list. Love is not presented as soft perfection, but as two flawed people discovering whether they still trust each other when everything goes wrong. Netflix describes the story as a couple near a split who accidentally get pulled into a murder case while trying to clear their names. The comedy keeps it fast, but underneath the jokes is a sharp question. Are they fighting because they hate each other, or because something still matters? It is messy, loud, risky, and surprisingly revealing. Number 11, All the Bright Places, 2020. Some romances do not seduce you with glamour. They break your heart by feeling too real. All the Bright Places is one of the softer titles on this list, but emotionally, it belongs in mature romance because it deals with pain, loneliness, healing, and the fragile way two damaged people can find light in each other. Elle Fanning and Justice Smith lead a story about Violet and Theodore, two teenagers carrying personal wounds that are not easy to explain and even harder to escape. Netflix describes it as two teens facing personal struggles who form a powerful bond while exploring the wonders of Indiana. That simple setup becomes something much heavier, a romance about emotional rescue, but also about the limits of love when someone is fighting battles inside their own mind. It is not a fantasy romance, and that is the point. It feels tender, painful, and honest. The kind of love story that stays quiet until it suddenly hurts. Number 10, People We Meet on Vacation, 2026. The most dangerous love story is sometimes the one pretending to be friendship. People We Meet on Vacation brings the classic friends to lovers formula back with a warmer, more emotionally loaded twist. Poppy is free-spirited, restless, and unpredictable. Alex is careful, grounded, and built around routine. On paper, they should clash. But after years of summer trips, private jokes, missed timing, and emotional distance, their friendship starts asking a question neither of them can ignore. Was this always love, or did they only realize it too late? Netflix lists the film as a 2026 romance about polar opposite best friends wondering if they could be the perfect romantic match, starring Emily Bader and Tom Blythe. That is why this entry works so well for retention. It is not just about romance, it is about regret, timing, and the fear of ruining the one relationship that already feels like home. A sweet setup, but the emotional stakes are quietly brutal. Number 9. Anyone But You, 2023. Sometimes the hottest romance starts with two people pretending they cannot stand each other. Anyone But You works because it understands one of romance cinema's oldest tricks. Fake hatred often hides real fascination. Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney play Ben and Bea, two attractive, stubborn people whose promising first meeting collapses into bitterness, misunderstanding, and wounded pride. Then the movie throws them into a destination wedding, where every smile is watched, every insult has tension behind it, and every fake romantic gesture starts feeling a little too convincing. On the surface, this is glossy, funny, and easy to watch, but the reason it became such a conversation starter is the chemistry. The film does not try to reinvent romance. It sharpens the classic enemies to lovers formula for a modern audience that wants banter, jealousy, awkward closeness, and emotional payoff. The mature edge comes from how both characters hide insecurity behind confidence. They are not innocent dreamers. They are people bruised by timing, pride, and fear of rejection. That makes the romance feel playful but not empty. By the end, Anyone But You proves one simple thing. Sometimes the person irritating you the most is the one getting dangerously close to the truth. Number 8, Hitman, 2024. A fake identity turns into a romantic trap, and suddenly the lie feels more honest than real life. Hitman is not a traditional romance, and that is exactly why it belongs here. Glenn Powell plays Gary Johnson, a mild-mannered professor who works undercover for the police by pretending to be a professional killer. At first, it feels like a clever crime comedy, but then Madison enters the story, and the entire movie shifts into something more seductive, dangerous, and psychologically messy. She is not just attracted to Gary, she is attracted to the version of him that does not really exist. That is the hook. The romance is built on performance, fantasy, risk, and the terrifying question of whether desire is aimed at the person or the mask they wear. Richard Linklater keeps the tone stylish and playful, but underneath the humor is a sharp adult idea. People often become more exciting when they are pretending to be someone else. The chemistry gives the film heat, but the moral tension gives it bite. Hitman is smart, slippery, and unusually fun because its romance does not ask, will they fall in love? It asks, how much truth can a relationship survive? Number 7. After 2019. This is the kind of romance people criticize in public and secretly keep watching anyway. After became a massive young adult romantic drama phenomenon because it takes a familiar fantasy, the good girl, the mysterious bad boy, the dangerous attraction, and packages it with maximum emotional intensity. Josephine Langford plays Tessa, a focused student whose carefully controlled life is shaken when she meets Hardin, played by Hero Fiennes Tiffin. He is guarded, arrogant, wounded, and exactly the kind of person who turns romance into a battlefield. The appeal is not subtle, but it is powerful. Viewers are pulled into the push and pull of obsession, vulnerability, jealousy, and emotional chaos. That is why the movie fits a mature romance countdown, even if it divides audiences. It is not about perfect love, it is about the fantasy of being the one person who can reach someone impossible. The story became even bigger through its sequels, but the first film carries the raw hook that started everything. It understands drama as addiction. Every argument feels like a confession waiting to happen, every silence feels loaded, and every reunion feels temporary. After may not be gentle romance, but it is extremely watchable because it turns emotional confusion into the main attraction. Number 6. Newness, 2017. Modern dating looks free until the feelings become impossible to control. Newness is one of the most honest entries on this list because it does not treat romance like a fairy tale. It looks at love in the age of dating apps, instant attraction, endless options, and emotional restlessness. Nicholas Hoult and Laia Costa play Martin and Gabby, two people who meet through modern dating culture and quickly fall into a connection that feels exciting, intimate, and unstable. The film's real subject is not just attraction. It is the fear of being trapped when the world keeps offering another choice. That makes it feel mature in a very contemporary way. Instead of asking whether two people love each other, Newness asks whether love can survive curiosity, insecurity, and the constant temptation to compare one relationship with everything else outside it. The romance is vulnerable, but it is also uncomfortable because both characters want closeness without losing freedom. That tension gives the movie its bite. It feels like a warning wrapped inside a love story. When everything becomes available, commitment can start to feel like a risk. Newness is not glossy escapism. It is messy, intimate, and quietly brutal about how modern romance can make people feel lonelier, not safer. Number 5. Lust Stories, 2018. 4 stories, 4 secrets, and 1 uncomfortable truth. Romance is never as simple as society pretends. Lust Stories is a bold Indian anthology that explores desire, marriage, emotional neglect, power, and personal freedom through 4 separate films. What makes it stand out is not shock for the sake of shock, but the way it uses intimate relationships to expose hypocrisy. Each segment looks at people trapped between what they want and what they are expected to be. Teachers, partners, spouses, domestic workers, families, everyone is caught inside rules that appear respectable on the surface but become suffocating underneath. The mature power of Lust Stories comes from how openly it discusses longing without reducing the characters to cheap scandal. It is about emotional hunger, silence inside relationships, and the private choices people make when public life demands obedience. Some stories are funny, some are painful, and some are quietly rebellious, but together they form a portrait of romance that feels adult because it refuses to lie. Love here is not always pure, marriage is not always safe, and attraction is not always convenient. Lust Stories earns its place because it turns mature romance into social commentary, sharp, stylish, uncomfortable, and impossible to dismiss. Number 4. Madame Claude, 2021. Behind the glamour is a dangerous empire built on secrets, control, and desire. Madame Claude is not a simple romance film. It is a stylish French drama about power, intimacy, and survival in a world where beauty becomes currency. Set around the infamous Parisian figure Fernande Groudet, known as Madame Claude, the film follows a woman who creates an elite network tied to wealth, politics, and influence. What makes it work for this list is the atmosphere. This is romance stripped of innocence and placed inside a world of calculation, ambition, and emotional damage. The film understands that mature stories are not only about love, they are about who holds power when attraction becomes business. Carole Rocher plays Madame Claude with icy control, but the cracks underneath that control are what make the character fascinating. She is not presented as a dream figure. She is sharp, guarded, and constantly aware that one wrong move could destroy everything she built. The romantic elements are shadowed by danger, status, and betrayal, which gives the film a darker pulse than traditional love stories. Madame Claude is seductive in mood but cold in message. When desire enters the world of power, nobody stays untouched, and nobody is completely innocent.
Number 3, Lady Chatterley's Lover, 2022. A lonely marriage, a forbidden connection, and a woman slowly waking up to her own life. Lady Chatterley's Lover is one of Netflix's strongest mature romantic dramas because it takes a classic, scandalous story and gives it emotional weight instead of treating it as simple provocation. Emma Corrin plays Connie, a woman trapped in a cold, upper-class marriage after her husband returns from war, physically changed and emotionally distant. Then she meets Oliver Mellers, the gamekeeper played by Jack O'Connell, and the film becomes a story of class, longing, freedom, and self-discovery. What makes this romance powerful is not just the forbidden nature of the affair, but the way it challenges the life Connie is expected to accept. The estate looks beautiful, but emotionally it feels like a prison. Every quiet walk, every stolen conversation, and every dangerous glance pushes her closer to a choice society will not forgive. The mature appeal comes from the emotional seriousness behind the passion. This is not just about attraction. It is about a woman realizing that comfort without love can become another kind of captivity. Lady Chatterley's Lover earns its high place because it turns forbidden romance into a rebellion against class, duty, and emotional starvation.
Number 2, 50 Shades of Grey, 2015. Few romance films became this famous, this mocked, and this impossible to ignore. 50 Shades of Grey is controversial, glossy, dramatic, and instantly recognizable. Exactly the kind of movie that pulls viewers into an 18-plus romance countdown. Dakota Johnson plays Anastasia Steele, a literature student whose life changes when she interviews Christian Grey, played by Jamie Dornan. He is wealthy, controlled, mysterious, and emotionally distant, which creates the fantasy engine of the film, a seemingly ordinary woman entering a world of luxury, rules, secrets, and dangerous attraction. The movie's reputation often overshadows the actual story, but that reputation is part of why it remains so clickable. People watched it to judge it, discuss it, mock it, defend it, or simply understand the cultural storm around it. As romance, it is less about healthy perfection and more about fascination, power imbalance, curiosity, and the thrill of stepping into something unfamiliar. The film is polished like a perfume commercial, but underneath the glamour is a relationship built on negotiation, control, and emotional damage. That makes it divisive, but never boring. 50 Shades of Grey may not be everyone's idea of great romance, but as a Netflix-style mature romantic title, it is pure audience bait.
Number 1, The Next 365 Days, 2022.
This is the romance franchise people call outrageous, then somehow keep searching for again. The Next 365 Days takes the most controversial modern adult romance series and pushes it deeper into jealousy, emotional confusion, luxury fantasy, and relationship chaos. By this point, Laura and Massimo are no longer just caught in attraction. They are trapped in the consequences of obsession, mistrust, and unresolved desire. The film plays like a glossy storm of expensive locations, dramatic looks, wounded pride, and choices that never feel simple. Its power is not in subtle storytelling. Its power is in being impossible to ignore. Viewers know exactly what kind of heightened fantasy they are entering, a world where romance is dramatic, excessive, morally messy, and designed to provoke strong reactions. That is why it takes the #1 spot for this specific title. It is not the safest romance, not the most critically respected, and definitely not the most realistic, but it is one of the most recognizable mature romance titles associated with Netflix.
The film understands spectacle as seduction. Fashion, wealth, music, heartbreak, temptation, and emotional danger all collide. The next 365 days is controversial by design, and for watch time, controversy is often the strongest hook of all. So which of these mature Netflix romances would you actually watch alone? And which one do you think is completely overrated? Drop your pick in the comments because this list proves one thing. Romance is not always sweet, safe, or innocent. Sometimes the most addictive love stories are the ones we argue about after the credits roll.